Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find. I'm your host, Nick. You are listening to episode 67 of Talking Blue. Today, we're doing a preview on the National League Championship Series. That's right, the Dodgers will be taking on the Milwaukee Brewers, the best team in the regular season from this year. So we're going to preview those two teams, the series, and all that stuff, and just give you guys some information about the Brewers. So, as always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. If you go to our TikTok right now at Talking Blue Pod, you can see a lot of cool videos that I've been making, some edits, Roki Sasaki, Teoscar Hernandez, some cool stuff on there. And then on my personal X at Talking Blue Nick, if you're a big Dodger fan, I'm the perfect person to follow. Do a lot of breakdowns, tweet about the Dodgers, stats, information, all that kind of stuff, including just live tweeting when I'm watching the games. And then on Reddit as well at competitive-week8715. It's a tongue twister. All right, so we now find out the Dodgers will be playing the Brewers. The Brewers beat the Cubs last night at the time of this recording, Saturday night. They beat the they beat the Cubs in 5. I told you guys last time we talked, I was preparing for the Brewers. That's who I thought was going to win. I was just always, coming into this postseason, I felt like the Dodgers, if they wanted to get back to the World Series, they would have to go past the Brewers. And obviously, if you're the Brewers, you know that the National League kind of runs through the Dodgers. So I thought that they would meet up. They're a good team. So it's a rematch of the 2018 NLCS, which is pretty cool. So at the time of this recording, none of the starting pitchers are released. Obviously, we know it's pretty much going to be Shohei or Blake Snell. I would imagine it's Shohei, but there is some, funky stuff that they could do if they want to start Blake Snell. Obviously, it's a much longer series, so starting a pitcher the first couple days of the series is important, given how much rest they might need to pitch again later in the series and all that stuff. So maybe there's even a chance they want to go with Yamamoto early in the series if they need him for a game 6 or 7. So at the time, none of that is released. We don't know who will be starting, and especially for the Brewers, because they're one of those teams that has a little bit of injuries. They use their entire pitching staff, so it's kind of impossible. And like I said, they just played the day before, so I don't even think they know who they're starting yet. The Dodgers probably have a good idea. They just haven't announced it. So today was going to be a little bit of a short pod. It's not necessarily going to be a full breakdown, like how do the two teams match up. I'm really just going to give you guys some info on the Brewers if you don't know much about them, tell you, what makes them good, what they're not so good at, what pretty much made them the best team in the regular season, and, some of their good players, and just talk about all that stuff. So like I said, it won't be too long of a pod. I can't really go into the breakdowns yet because I don't really know who's going to be pitching, but the Dodgers and the Brewers, pretty cool. Like I said, the last time they played, 2018 National League Championship Series, and I was thinking about this earlier today. It's kind of ironic because there's a lot of similarities to these two teams and this season to that season, 2018. So as we all know, the Dodgers usually have a very good record in the regular season. We're spoiled Dodger fans. We usually see 100-win teams, probably have the best record in baseball, definitely in the National League. They usually are always hosting game 1 of a postseason series. It's actually pretty rare that the Dodgers play a postseason series, game 1, and it's not in LA. If you think about it, that's kind of rare for them. And ironically, the last time the Dodgers had a season like this season, 2025, was 2018. I'll take you back to 2018. They obviously were just coming off the 2017 World Series appearance where they lost in Game 7. Everybody loved that team. There's a lot of people who always, talk about that team. Obviously, we know what happened with the Astros stuff. But 2018 was anything nothing similar to that previous year. And then a lot of the years that followed 2018, they had a lot of injuries earlier in the year. Justin Turner, I think, broke his hand in spring training. I mean, that was before we even knew who Max Muncy was. They had a couple other injuries, and then even some other guys who kind of had like down seasons, like Cody Bellinger came back from his rookie year, was not as good, still was a good player, but wasn't what he was the year before. And a little older, like Kershaw was getting a little older. They still had some other guys like Hyun-Jin Ryu, but just overall, it was a different team. They didn't really have a good bullpen that year. Anyways, they started off the year very slow, and they ended up catching the then Diamondbacks in the division, and then eventually it was the Rockies. They ended up going to a game 163. There was a lot of time throughout that season where it looked like the Dodgers weren't even going to make the postseason, let alone win the division, which they did on the final day of the regular season. It took a game 163, won the division. Then they ended up playing the Braves in the first round that year, took them out in 4, and then they faced the Milwaukee Brewers, who also had the best record in the National League that year. They didn't have the best record in baseball. That was the Red Sox. But they had the best record in the NL. They met up with the Dodgers. So, again, just like this year, the Dodgers were not hosting that series. Game 1 of that series was in Milwaukee, as was Game 7. Super electric series, actually, and it was a really back-and-forth series. The Brewers actually took Game 1. If I remember correctly, they got out to a big lead in Game 1. Kind of looked like they were going to cruise to a win, and then the Dodgers actually came back later in the game to make it a ball game. And then I think the final out, Justin Turner struck out with the tying run on third base. Then the Dodgers came out and won Game 2 in comeback fashion. Justin Turner hit a big home run. Then they proceeded to win. They lost Game 3 in LA, so they were down 2-1. Then they proceeded to win the next 2 and go up 3-2. Went back to Milwaukee. Milwaukee forced a Game 7, and then the Dodgers won Game 7. Couple home runs, Cody Bellinger, Yasiel Puig, and then Walker Buehler pitched pretty solid. And they won the game. Clayton Kershaw closed it out. I don't think it was a save opportunity. Super epic series. We're 7 minutes into this now. We haven't talked about this year's Brewers. But the correlations that I'm connecting is that the Dodgers that year didn't have the greatest regular season. Was going to be a little bit of a harder path to get back to the World Series, but they pulled it off against a red-hot, really good Brewers team that a lot of people thought were going to go to the World Series that year. So, I think it's a little different. That year, I think the Brewers were better than the Dodgers. I think that the Dodgers had more talent and had a lot of, they had better players, but the Brewers were a better team at the time. I think they won 95 games that year. They had a really good bullpen, and Christian Yelich was the MVP. This year is kind of similar, but also different. I think, once again, the Dodgers have better players. Obviously, they have the MVP this year on their side in Shohei, and I just think overall they have more experienced players, better players, but the Brewers this year were a better team for sure, and they are a very unique kind of team that you don't always see in the postseason. So let me give you some info on the Milwaukee Brewers. So obviously they won the National League Central, and they had the best record in the game. I think it was 97 wins. But how did the Brewers go about it? So offensively, the Brewers were third in runs scored in Major League Baseball. They were third in batting average, second in on-base percentage, but only 12th in slugging percentage. So we'll talk about that. They had the 6th highest walk percentage and the 5th lowest strikeout percentage. They were 22nd in home runs, so that is why that slugging percentage is a little lower. But they were second in stolen bases, and they had the lowest chase percentage in all of Major League Baseball. So there's a lot to dig in there. Basically, the Brewers are not the modern-day offense, which is built around home runs, slugging, and stuff like that. Now, they do bring some of that stuff to the table because they walk and they don't chase, which is something the Dodgers have always prioritized and have always built their lineups around. But they, like I said, they lack home runs. If you look up and down their lineup, they're kind of a funny team because they don't have any players like, of course, Shohei and Mookie and Freddie Freeman. Like, if you look at their weighted runs created plus 100 is league average. To put that in perspective, Shohei's weighted runs created plus this year was 170 or something like that. The Brewers actually don't have one player with a WRC plus over 130, but mostly everyone in their lineup is in the 105 to 120 range. So they all have the lineup is full of really solid hitters. And like I said, they are very good when it comes to not chasing. So they walk a lot, don't chase out of the zone. They put the ball in play a lot. I don't think they're the highest contact team. I think that's the Blue Jays. The Brewers might be second. So they're a team that, like I said, 5th lowest K percentage, 6th highest walk percentage. So the walk percentage is pretty high, and they don't strike out. So basically, if you watched the Blue Jays play the Yankees this year, or I should say in the postseason, the Brewers are very similar. So there are some scary things in that the more that the ball is in play, the harder it is for your defense. Your defense has to show up and make plays. So, but the thing about that is in the postseason, there's a lot of urban legends, and there's a lot of, I think, I think there's a lot of people who kind of misrepresent what postseason baseball is and how to win in postseason baseball. First off, I would say I don't think there's an exact blueprint when it comes to winning in the postseason, because I think there have been teams in the past who hit a lot of home runs and strike out. There are teams that were built around pitching. There were teams that didn't hit as many home runs. I don't think there's an exact blueprint, but I think that nowadays we all know that baseball, there's a lot of strikeouts and a lot of home runs. And I think that there is a lot of people who think that to counter that in the postseason, that doesn't work. I think that you see a lot of people say, hey, home runs and strikeouts, that's great in the regular season, but in the postseason, that won't win games. That is not true. There are a lot of people who think that, and that's just simply not true. Hitting home runs is the best way to win in the postseason. And the reason why is because in the postseason, you are always facing better pitching, high leverage arms. You're never facing, the team's 5th starter or someone much lower in the bullpen. It's always their best starters that are available and high leverage arms. It doesn't mean it's a crapshoot, and that doesn't mean that you can't rally, hits together and string hits together and, create a rally. But it is, it is a foolish thought to think that every inning you could just string together hits. These guys are too nasty. And at the end of the day, you do need to hit home runs and have that one swing that can change a game, like we saw in Game 1 of the NLDS with Teoscar Hernandez. Now, again, if you live and die by the home run and the strikeout, that is not the, of course, best way to do it, because if the home run is not getting out of the park, then you're going to be striking out a lot and not scoring, and ultimately you're going to lose. But I just wanted to put that out there because a lot of people think that there's this bad thing about hitting home runs or living and dying by the home run. And while I don't think you should live and die by the home run, hitting home runs are obviously great. And if you hit home runs in the postseason, that means you have a good shot in winning. And go look at the last 10 years and the last 5 years. All the teams that have won World Series, for the most part, are in the top 5 in home runs. Now, does that mean that the Dodgers are guaranteed to beat the Brewers? Of course not. And does that mean the Brewers are like a fake good team? No, I don't think so. I think they're a really good team. And they've actually hit some home runs in the postseason so far. And if they do what they normally do with their lineup, putting the ball in play, walking, not striking out, and hitting home runs, they're going to be very, very tough to beat. So that is kind of the, big question mark, is how are the Brewers going to hit in this series, and are they going to slug? And will all that contact and all that stuff actually lead to them beating the Dodgers, or can the Dodgers' elite pitching shut down the Brewers? They don't really put as many balls in play as they're used to, and they're not hitting the home run, and the Dodgers are able to kind of quiet their bats. That's what I think I think that there's a high chance and a high possibility that something like that kind of plays out in this series. Now on the pitching side, they are also very good. They combine that pretty good offense with really good pitching. So they are second in team ERA in all of Major League Baseball, third in starting pitching ERA, and then sixth in bullpen ERA. So I actually thought that their bullpen ERA was going to be higher than the starting pitching ERA. That's not the case. So They are anchored down by Freddie Peralta. Freddie Peralta, really good pitcher, one of the better pitchers in the game. Probably isn't a top 10 pitcher or anything like that, but he is a very good pitcher, kind of like a workhorse, gets a lot of strikeouts. But other than that, they are a little bit of a, like I said, a funky team. They kind of only have like 2 starting pitchers right now, Freddie Peralta and then Quinn Prester, who has seen time out of the bullpen as well. But guys like Jacob Mizorowski, Chad Patrick, Jose Quintana, who are mostly starters for them, have kind of been coming out of the bullpen. So one way that I would like to prepare everyone is that the Brewers use everyone in that bullpen and the rotation basically as a whole. So yeah, when Freddie Peralta pitches, it'll be a traditional start, but pretty much other than that, it's going to be, openers, a bullpen pitcher start the game, 1 inning, maybe just 2 hitters, maybe he just goes 2 innings. Then you'll see some guys try to eat innings, and then from the 5th inning to the 9th inning, it's going to be matchup based. They're going to use a lot of high leverage guys that they have. Abner Uribe has been the closer for them for a lot this year. Trevor McGill, who has been the closer for them the last couple years, did have an injury earlier in the year. That's why Uribe was closing. And then McGill actually did come back for the postseason, and he's been pitching out of the pen for them. I don't think he's had any closer opportunities. I think they've been using him earlier in the game. Jared Coing, he's another lefty that they have to go along with Aaron Ashby. Those are 2 really good lefties that they have. Obviously, Mizorowski has kind of come out of the bullpen but pitched multiple innings. They have other guys, Nick Mears, like I said, Chad Patrick, and as well Grant Anderson, side armor. So they have a really good, mix of pitchers. They're a little bit of like what the Rays used to be, where they have a lot of different looks, guys who have different arm angles, and then on top of that, they all throw hard. I mean, Abner Uribe, Trevor McGill, Aaron Ashby, obviously Mizorowski, all those guys throw gas. And Mizorowski legitimately was hitting 104, 103 against the Cubs in one of his first outings. So they throw super hard. They don't strike out. So offensively, they're a little bit of a unique team. Out of the bullpen and just their pitching staff overall is what you see most of the time nowadays with guys throwing hard, but they have a very deep pen. So that's why they're able to kind of shorten the game and not necessarily have that many starting pitchers. So that's why, whoever pitches game 1 on Monday, that's why it literally could be anyone, because they use everyone to close out a game. So it's going to be a lot of pitching changes. It's going to be tough on the Dodgers offense, because they're probably not going to see a lot of the same pitcher, 1 or 2 times through the lineup. They're going to make a lot of pitching changes. So they use their entire staff to get through games. So that is what makes them good. And like I said, they throw the ball very hard and they have nasty stuff. So they are a really, really good team. Now, a couple other things. If you go back to midsummer when the Dodgers were playing really, really bad, the Brewers beat the Dodgers in every single game this year. And it's funny because if you follow this podcast, if you remember back in July when the Dodgers played the Brewers, they were like a nightmare to play. So now I think this is a much different Dodgers team. The Brewers never faced Shohei on the mound, and they never saw Blake Snell. Both times that Tyler Glasnow pitched against them, he pitched really good. They did get to Yamamoto in Milwaukee. I don't even think he made it a full inning. But they played. If you go back and look at those games, it was their season, and the way they play was put on display in that series. They didn't put the ball in play. A lot of 2-out hits. They're kind of like a thorn in your side kind of team. They're not going to go away. They're going to put pressure on you. And then 2 of the other things like they do, like I said, they steal a lot of bases, second in all Major League Baseball, and they play very good defense. So William Contreras behind the plate is a really good defensive catcher, but all around their infield, Caleb Durbin, Joey Ortiz, Bryce Terang, all really, really good infielders. And then in the outfield, they have a lot of guys that could play center field, like Sal Frelick plays right field. He's a really good defensive outfielder. Blake Perkins, who plays center field for them sometimes, he's a really elite defensive outfielder. And then they have Jackson Churio, who's another guy who's like a center fielder that also can play left and center field. They use their whole bench, a lot of platoon guys. And then obviously pretty much their best hitter is Christian Yelich. So like I said, when you look at a lot of their, a lot of the guys up and down the lineup and you look at their numbers, Bryson Terang was pretty much their best hitter on the year. He had a 124 WRC plus. He's a guy who's always been a really good defensive second baseman, but a below league average bat. And then he was on fire in the second half. Hit 18 home runs, stole 24 bases. He had an on-base percentage of .359. And, right now he's hitting third for them, and he is one of their best hitters. Christian Yelich, who ever since that MVP year in 2018 has kind of like fluctuated from being good to not being good. But the last couple of years, he's kind of like got back to not what he was as an MVP, but a really good, valuable player. Now he's DH at his age. He did play 150 games, so shout out to him because he's had a lot of injuries, but no longer plays the outfield. He's a DH. He had a 121 WRC plus. He hit 29 home runs. Again, he has a 343 on base. Another guy who doesn't go out of the strike zone. Isaac Collins, who plays left field for them, 122 WRC plus. He's actually not listed on their roster, so I wonder if he's actually injured, and I didn't realize that. Like I said, Sal Frelick, 114 WRC plus. William Contreras, 113. Jackson Chourio, who is definitely going to be their best player going forward. He's only 21 years old, and he hit 21 home runs this year, 111 WRC plus. It's going to be a tough series, no doubt. I do think these are the two best teams in the National League. I know technically the Phillies had a better record than the Dodgers, but I just think that this was the best regular season team who kind of got the most out of their roster. The Brewers are one of those teams kind of like the Guardians, like the Rays, where they use the entire roster. They squeeze every little ounce of juice out of their roster, and they have every little guy contribute. Platoon hitters, defense, guys who can run, and they built a really good team, and they're kind of a team that, ever since 2018 is a pretty regularly, they pretty regularly make the postseason, a little up and down, but there's many years that they missed it, but there's been a ton of years where they win the National League Central and get into the postseason as a wild card team and then get bounced. They've done that a lot. They lost to the Diamondbacks one year, and then they lost to the Mets last year, and there was a year where they lost to the Braves in the first round. So I thought that this was a year they would get to the NLCS. Now, I think that the Dodgers will beat them. I think that something that's going to play out in this series, I don't know if I'm going to give a prediction about when does the series end. I think the Dodgers, maybe Dodgers in 6. It's going to be a really good series. I think that, like I said, when it comes to how do the Dodgers beat them and, how do the Dodgers attack them, I think that something that's going to play out in this series is that the Brewers and their offense, a lot of those things that people kind of talked about with the no home runs and stuff, I think there's a chance that kind of plays out. Now, we'll see because they hit home runs against the Cubs, but I think when they go up against the Dodgers' really good starting pitching, I think that they're going to struggle, going up against Shohei, going up against Blake Snell, Yamamoto, and I think that they're not going to be hitting many home runs, and yes, they may have some guys on base because they're going to get some singles and get some hits and walks, but I think that the Dodgers' elite starting pitching is going to kind of overcome that, that really good lineup that they have. And then on the flip side, I think that the Dodgers lineup can hit their pitching. I don't think that they have anyone scary in their rotation. Freddie Peralta is good, and I think that he could shut down the Dodgers. And I think he pitched good against them earlier this year. They don't really have anyone that's like scary, like Christopher Sanchez, like, oh, that's going to be a tough day. Or Ranger Suarez, Hunter Green, who the Dodgers faced with the Reds. They don't really have anyone like that. Now, again, what is scary is that late in game, they have a lot of nasty, nasty options to go to, like Mizorowski, obviously, if he comes out of the bullpen. But Uribe and McGill, Coeg, and as well as Aaron Ashby. So one positive is that they don't have a ton of lefties for Shohei. They don't really have any lefty starters. And the one that they do is Quintana, who of Shohei I think has good numbers against. He took him deep last NLCS. So I think a really big key for the Dodgers is to put up runs in the series, because I think that the Phillies did a really good job against the Dodgers, and a lot of their really good bats, obviously Shohei. So that is a massive, important thing, is that the lineup gets, a little bit more hot. I think Shohei is the biggest, he's the most important guy to come through, because I believe that Mookie's going to continue to play good. I think Freddie, while I would love to see him, kind of have those highs that he had against the Yankees last year where he's unbelievable, I think you can always pencil him in to be consistent. Teoscar, I think you can always pencil in to be up and down, where he's going to, strike out and, have some ugly at-bats, but I also believe that he's going to hit some balls out of the ballpark and come up with some big hits. Will Smith is a guy for me that I like to see continue to put up some good at-bats. Towards the end of that Philly series, he put up some really good at-bats. And then Tommy Edman, I actually thought swung the bat really well. I think after Mookie and, maybe Teoscar, he had some of the best at-bats against the Phillies. Did line out a few times and hit, was a little unlucky, but I really liked him. Now, the Brewers, like I said, do not have as many left-handed pitchers, so Tommy's going to have to do something from the left side of the plate. But, then another guy is Max Muncy. He had that left-on-left hit against Jesus Luzardo. Hopefully something like that unlocks him for this series. But I think the biggest guy that I need to show up is Shohei. I need his bat. We need him at the top of the lineup, getting on base to start the games. And later in the game, when you're facing some of these high leverage guys, I need to see the better at bats. And I think their offense is going to be better in this series because, like I said, I don't think the Brewers have as many elite starting pitchers and guys to go to. Now, like I said, it'll be harder scoring games. So that's pretty much all my thoughts that I have. I think it's going to be a really fun series, really good. I think that on the American League side, you have the Mariners and the Blue Jays, who I think are two evenly matched teams that could go either way. I think this series is very evenly matched, but even at a higher level, or these I think are the two best teams left, and you're going to see some really good games, some really cool moments. So again, just like I said in my last podcast, so everyone knows, the Dodgers are not going to sweep the Brewers. At least I don't think. I think that would be nice, but the Brewers are a tough team. You got to try to get out of Milwaukee with a 1-1 split. Go to LA even 1-1, and then you got to do your best to win 2 out of 3 back in LA, and then handle your business in those final 2 games in Milwaukee. So that's pretty much it. This is going to be really fun. I think, like I said, that I think how it's going to play out is the Dodgers starting pitching is going to really dominate some of these Brewers hitters, and then the Dodgers are going to be able to win some close games, maybe hit some homers late, kind of similar to those first 2 games that we saw in Philly. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Pretty quick pod. Just wanted to give you guys some info on the Brewers and my thoughts. And, I can't wait to see first pitch tomorrow, Monday night. So thank you guys for listening. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. You can follow myself at Talking Blue Nick on X, and you can follow us on Reddit at competitive-week8715. Again, thank you guys. Drop some predictions. How many games will the Dodgers win in? Can they sweep? Is it Dodgers in 7? Who's going deep in game 1? Give me your thoughts, all that. Leave it in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back, hopefully, to talk about game 1 of the NLCS.